"Your services are no longer required," Zach announced. "Clear your office by tomorrow." I observed the faces around me, everyone with raised eyebrows, executives shifting uncomfortably in chairs, perhaps finding it difficult to believe, and my brother with that self-satisfied smile I knew all too well. He had waited years for this moment. "Is that all?" I asked, my voice steady despite the anger bubbling beneath. "Yes, Elena, that will be all," Zach replied. I gathered my notepad, pen, and walked out with my dignity intact. My name is Elena Maddox, 34 years old, and until 10 minutes ago, I was the executive vice president of operations at the company my grandfather founded. For over a decade, I had been the one securing contracts, building client relationships, and structuring the deals that accounted for most of our revenue. My older brother, Zach, he was a charmer, sure. He looks good in suits and on paper. But back-end operations, crisis management, vendor strikes out at midnight the day before a six-figure wedding? That was me, always me. But while I was covered in sweet, Zach was always covered in glory. He didn't like heavy lifting. I went to my office quietly. My assistant, Grace, looked up, her expression immediately concerned when she saw my face. "Elena, what happened in there?" I closed the door behind me before answering. "Zach fired me. Effective immediately. I need to clear out tomorrow." Grace's mouth fell open. "He can't do that. Without you, this place would—" "He can." And he just did. I sank into my chair, allowing myself just one moment of shock before the wheels in my mind started turning. Dad made him CEO, and the board approved it. It's his show now. But why? You've brought in over 70% of our major clients. I smiled faintly, and that's precisely why. I've outshined him for years, and he couldn't stand it. But as the initial shock faded, a curious calm settled over me. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out my contact list. It was goldmine. Chefs, stylists, lighting designers, venue owners. People whose lives I had saved when their deliveries didn't show, when the permits were pulled last minute, when the bride fainted during rehearsal and I was the one holding the needle and thread and the smelling salts. Loyalty isn't bought. It's earned. In sweat, in silence, and sometimes in secrets. And I had all of theirs. I didn't poach. When the news broke that I was no longer working with Maddox & Co., they called, and when I told them I was starting my own company, they were ready to join me. That's how Eon Events was born from loyalty, hard work, no fanfare, no flashy launch. Every inch of Eon was built from muscle memory, from years of triaging disasters at midnight and turning chaos into elegance. With my assistant and few staffs, instead of chasing legacy clients, I curated the future. Tech millionaires with social disorders, Gen Z CEOs who thought tradition was a disease. They didn't care that Maddox had handled 5 governors' balls. They cared that I offered drone-synced fireworks coded by AI to sync with Kendrick Lamar. I didn't blink. I delivered. And Maddox & Company? Still posting about celebrating heritage. Then came the Jameson Gala, $900,000 of pure spectacle, a crown jewel, a contract that had been in my family for over a decade. Zach thought it was a lock. He wore the Jameson deal like armor. Boasted about another year of excellence on LinkedIn, complete with a sepia photo of him shaking the founder's hand. But what he didn't know? The founder's daughter came to me. So I pitched her something the board wouldn't dare to dream of, a floating light show on water. They signed. Publicly. The press release dropped like a guillotine. Zach's face must have cracked behind his designer lenses. He called, angry, desperate. A wounded animal snarling. "Elena, what the hell is this?" I played dumb. "Sorry? Oh, you mean the Jameson event? You stole them." "No tepto," I said. "I earned them. Funny how that works when people trust you." He called me names. I let him. He switched tactics. A few days later, I got a polite, formal cease and desist letter from Maddox & Company's legal department, accusing me of breaching a non-compete clause. I laughed when I read it. The clause was unenforceable in our state, something I had told him myself 2 years ago when we updated employee contracts. He hadn't listened then. He wasn't listening now. Zach had never been interested in the bones of the business, just the applause. Eon Events was doing well. Our calendar was booked 6 months out, and Vogue Business had just done a feature on the event architect disrupting East Coast luxury. But the Maddox name was shrinking. One of our major wins was the Mirren and Company IPO after party, a $2.1 million spectacle on a barge drifting down the Hudson. The whole thing was live-streamed by drone, with synchronized LED poetry displays trailing behind the vessel like digital banners. I just returned from that event when Grace poked her head into my office. "You're going to want to see this." She turned the monitor to face me. The headline blared, "Maddox and Company cancels annual Winter Heritage Gala amid budget cuts." Below, in smaller print, sources say internal tensions and client losses are putting pressure on the company, once considered the East Coast's premier luxury event firm. I leaned back in my chair, fingers steepled. Zach had managed to do in 1 year what generations of Maddox grit had avoided for 60 years. He gutted the heart from Maddox & Co. and replaced it with ego. My eyes drifted from the monitor to the framed photo on my wall. It was old. Me and Zach as kids, standing beside our grandfather, Thomas Maddox, at our first big event. He was holding our tiny hands in his, all three of us smiling in matching navy blazers. I remember that night like it was carved into my bones. The sound of champagne corks, the scent of gardenias, and Grandpa whispering to us, "We don't throw parties, we tell stories." And now, that story had ended in a cautionary tale. I was still lost in thought when my phone buzzed. "Dad, Elena, come by the house tomorrow. I need to talk to you." It was the first message I'd gotten from him in weeks. Our father had been sick, advanced Parkinson's, the slow kind that steals a little more of a person each time you see them. I hadn't told him about the firing, the betrayal, or Eon. He didn't need the stress, but something about the message felt final. The next day, I parked outside the old brownstone where I'd spent my childhood. "Elena," he said, voice raspier than the last time I'd heard it. "Come sit." I sat beside him. There were deep lines in his face now, a permanent shadow behind his eyes. But he smiled when he looked at me, not the forced public smile, a real one. "I saw the Jameson Gala," he said after a moment. I blinked. "You did?" "Of course I did," he chuckled, wheezing slightly. Everyone saw it. I smiled, embarrassed and proud all at once. "I wasn't sure you were still following the business stuff." He nodded slowly. "I haven't been." But then the board started calling, and then the press, and then... He looked down at his shaking hands. Then I read that headline. We sat in silence for a while. "I didn't know," he finally said, "that Zach fired you." I stiffened. "It didn't matter, I'm fine." "Don't lie to me, Elena. You built that company, the clients, the partnerships, the backbone. I know who really carried Maddox and Company all these years." I swallowed hard, suddenly 8 years old again, wishing he'd seen me more clearly back then. "I thought making him CEO would give him purpose," he admitted. "He always wanted the crown, but never the burden. I thought maybe the title would make him grow into the weight. I was wrong." My throat tightened. He reached into the drawer beside him and pulled out a battered folder. The original charter documents of Maddox and Company, signed in ink by our grandfather. "I want you to have this," he said, "not because I'm asking you to come back, but because it should have always been yours." I took it with trembling fingers. "I don't know if there's anything left to save," he continued, "but if there is, if there's even a spark left in that place, it needs you." There it was. Not a request, a quiet plea, a father asking his daughter to put out a fire she didn't start. I stood slowly. "I won't go back under Zach," I said finally. "You won't have to." I turned. He was already pulling out another document. This one with a legal header, thick with signatures. "The board removed him this morning," he said softly. "It's over." Silence stretched between us. "Will you help?" he asked. "Not for me, not for the name, for the people still left behind." I looked at the folder in my hands. My grandfather's signature, my father's regret, my brother's collapse. I thought of the workers who still showing up every day, scared of losing their paychecks. They were still there, waiting for something worth believing in again. I nodded, but not to rebuild Zach's version. "That's dead." Dad smiled. "Then make it yours." 6 months later, Maddox and Company didn't return to its former glory. It became something else entirely. Eon Events quietly acquired Maddox's most vital assets, a soft merger cloaked as salvation. The brand was reborn under a new umbrella, Maddox/Eon Collective. No longer just a legacy firm clinging to old prestige. Now it was leaner, louder, faster. Tradition married to innovation, ritual infused with rebellion. Zach disappeared from the headlines. Last I heard, he was living in Portugal. And I didn't just take back what was mine. I built something better, not from vengeance, but from vision. And this time, when the world applauded, it was for me.